Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing a report on Saturn Retrograde, which begins on the 17th of April and finishes on the 6th of September, and I'll be highlighting some of the key themes that the Saturn Retrograde in Capricorn will bring for us over the next few months. Now, one thing to remember with Saturn is that Saturn is like the guardian of potential, as a cosmic gatekeeper. If we don't learn the lessons that Saturn has, and we'll keep coming up against the same obstacles and keep feeling like we're being pushed back from achieving higher states of consciousness. But this is just to make sure that we go through the necessary work of purifying our egos and purifying our intentions, so that what we're doing is only ever aligned with truth. We're not trying to do something for our own benefit at the cost of other people. So Saturn, such as like the karmic taskmaster, it's that tough old teacher that we may not like, but it's the teacher that really pushes us to be the best version of ourselves that we can, by showing us the consequences of not trying our best or not taking responsibility for our actions. So during Saturn's retrograde, it's a bit like a period where when a caterpillar stops eating and it builds a chrysalis around itself in order to go through transformation. This is what Saturn retrograde can feel like. So a part of your consciousness kind of gets isolated from everything else, and a seed of transformation is sown within that period. And during this time we may find it takes a lot more effort to keep pushing forwards, and we may struggle to keep certain projects going, especially if these projects are not based in truth or they're not aligned with who we are. Because Capricorn is all about our personal integrity. It's being prepared to be our authentic selves and make sure that the public face that we show to the world, that your everyday stranger may see us as being represented by, it's learning to make sure that that public face is just an external manifestation of our internal nature. This is where public identity and private identity are one and the same. We're not wearing a mask and pretending to be something that we're not in public. We're being true to who we are, and we make sure that whatever we're doing is honest and a reflection of who we are and our core nature. Now, with Capricorn, and Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, so his energy is particularly strong during this time, and this is going to continue up until 2020, when Saturn makes his initial pass out into Aquarius. But during this time, Saturn is really testing our resolve and our desire to really and see if we truly desire the goals that we claim that we want to achieve. Because Saturn is about cultivating qualities like patience, perseverance, self-control and self-restraint, and it's also about learning the importance of delayed gratification, i.e. not needing things to happen straight away. It's understanding that sometimes we have to delay immediate satisfaction in order to achieve a greater satisfaction in the long run. And when we work with Saturn, we end up having or setting goals that when we accomplish them, it's this kind of accomplishment that no one can take away from us, because we've done it the hard way, or we've done it the correct way. We've not tried taking shortcuts to get there faster. We've appreciated the necessity of taking things slowly, doing the same task over and over again in order to make things happen. And we recognise that while some things can manifest immediately, some of the major long-term goals only happen through dedicated work on a day-by-day basis. So Saturn tests our discipline here and sees whether we actually do believe in the goals we've set ourselves or are committed to them, or if we're just giving a load of talking a load of air and not really saying anything. Because let's face it, a lot of us, we've all had periods where we've had a goal in mind and we're talking about it, but we never actually take the action necessary to make it happen. And Saturn will not allow us to move forward, or will not allow us to tap into deeper levels of potential until we deal with what's going on in the present moment. So Saturn is like that force that cause us to have to slow down and become present in our life in order to commit to the actions necessary to make a goal happen. And Saturn also brings up or highlights any weaknesses that we have within our character, within our psyche, that can undermine things, and it will, if we don't then work on this area and take the steps necessary to improve it, then we'll keep going round and round in circles and we won't make any further inroads into whatever goal we set for ourselves. So Saturn retrograde is a time where the ego is also diminished as such, so we have less of that egoic willpower in order to pursue something. So this is a time where we may have to look at the goals we've set for ourselves and realise which ones are not actually viable and not the right ones for us to be pursuing because they're not aligned with who we are, and cut our losses in these areas. It doesn't mean that we just give up on everything, because Saturn, either we respond to Saturn's pressure by strengthening ourselves, strengthening our resolve, and having that desire to develop that discipline necessary to push through hard times, or we end up devolving. We resist this need to take responsibility, and we just give up on things, and we end up devolving and moving backwards. So Saturn is that necessary resistance and that pressure needed in order to develop true strength. Saturn as such, we generally think of faith as being something that Jupiter gives us, but without Saturn, our faith would never really be tested, and we wouldn't know if it's true faith or if it's just blind optimism without any realism in it. Because Saturn demands that we get real. It demands that we put our faith to test and we let go of some of the crutches that we've been clinging on to because we think we need them when we don't. So by going through the trials that Saturn represents, we become much stronger individuals. But we have to choose to go down this route of self-discipline and taking personal responsibility for our lives. Saturn doesn't force that to happen as such, because as I've said with any other videos I've done, astrology doesn't control us. It's more like a set of influences which can shape the way things unfold and help us understand what is the best course of action to take at any given point based on the energies available and the kind of spiritual lessons that they entail. So Saturn isn't some external force. Saturn as such represents what's going on within our own psyche, and represents that part of us that has those key weaknesses that we need to work on and strengthen in order to make sure that we have the courage and the integrity and the patience to keep going at things. So Saturn is that test of patience, that test of resilience, and that test of faith. Do we believe in what we're going for? Do we believe in the goals we're setting for ourselves? Or do we give up at the first hurdle? Because the obstacles towards any goal are necessary to test our resolve and see if we truly believe in it, and the necessary tests of character to see if we can hold up and maintain our integrity in the face of adversity. So we all need this kind of pressure in order to evolve as individuals, to become the best versions of ourselves, and to develop that core strength and personal resilience in the face of pressure that allows us to keep pursuing a goal in the face of all kinds of odds. So Saturn as such is the strengthener. It's like the guardian of and high consciousness. If we're not prepared to take responsibility for ourselves, then we won't tap into any greater levels of potential. It's that inner guard that stops us from tapping into the deep levels of our potential until we're ready for it. Because certain things or certain tasks require a certain degree of character, certain reserves of patience and discipline in order for them to happen, and therefore we owe it to ourselves to develop these qualities, to develop that patience when the urge may be to give up. We need to develop that resilience to pressure so that we don't just drop things, we don't just give up any goals that we set for ourselves. Because any goal that is worth striving for will throw up challenges that push us to develop deeper reserves of strength, deeper reserves of patience, deeper reserves of self-discipline. If the goal doesn't require any self-discipline, is too easy, then we don't get we don't really get that sense of fulfillment that we crave for. But if we commit ourselves to some kind of long-term goal that will ultimately make us stronger as people, will help us to develop that personal integrity where we're being true to who we are, and also gives us that strength that enables us to help other people better. Because if we don't work on ourselves and we don't strive to become stronger, more resilient individuals in the face of adversity, then how on earth can we really expect to help other people in the same way? If we don't work on ourselves, we can't really help other people. So it's important that we do this work, that we go within and find out why, or figure out why do we struggle with things like discipline from time to time. Why do we not do something when we know we should? Because more often than not, it's not a case of we don't know what we should be doing. We do know, but we have this resistance to committing to the path necessary to achieve the goal, because we know it's going to push us out of that comfort zone. It's going to put us under a lot of pressure, but that pressure will ultimately make us stronger. So if we really want to make the best of Saturn retrograde, then we need to take that time to really slow down and evaluate what is it that we really want to achieve, what is it that we want to commit to, and what is true to who we are. Because if we're doing something that isn't right for us, then we get that feeling of being a fraud, and we then end up with that insecurity, and we end up striving towards a goal that isn't right for us, and we come across as that person who's like a workaholic or very domineering or controlling. These all stem from insecurities based on doing something that isn't right for who we are. So we have to do that inner work of knowing ourselves, of knowing the core of who we are, and making sure that whatever goals and actions we commit to, honour that core self, honour our true self, and enable us to operate in the world in complete harmony with our core nature, rather than trying to pretend to be something that we're not, and feeling like a fraud and feeling insecure about whatever we're doing. Because if we're doing something that's right for who we are, then generally speaking the discipline comes a lot more naturally, because we're not trying to do something that isn't right for us, we're not trying to do something we secretly despise. If it's something that's truly right for who we are, is honest, and is based on taking actions aligned with the karmic laws, then the discipline is almost like a natural byproduct of it. We're committed to it because we want to do it. But if we're constantly trying to pretend to be something that we're not, then this is where the shadow side of Capricorn, that cold, aloof, controlling side, comes out. So if we want to achieve the true, or the positive side of Capricorn, which is that commitment to self, that ability to not be swayed by public opinion, or not be swayed by the allure of social status, if we have the commitment to work on ourselves and become the best version of ourselves, then Saturn in Capricorn and this retrograde period is an opportunity to become very strong as individuals. We have that personal resilience in the face of adversity, and we have that commitment to stay true to who we are, and we don't just give up at the first hurdle and start people pleasing. So one of the aspects that can help with this is to remember to spend a bit of time in solitude. I'm not saying alienate ourselves from each other or engage in isolation tendencies. Solitude and isolation are not the same thing. Yes, both of them are to do with being on our own, but solitude is more about spending that time to connect with ourselves, to spend time in reflection, and making sure that we don't lose track of our core sense of self, we don't forget who we are, and we don't get pulled off centre. So it's taking that time to become centred within, and to make sure that the actions that we're taking are actually aligned with that. And if we recognise that the actions are not coherent with who we are, then we change them. But if we don't take the time to spend enough time getting to know ourselves and developing greater levels of self-knowledge, then we're more likely to be pulled off our path, more likely to be seduced by glamour and social status, and then we end up doing something that isn't who we are, and even if we're getting public acclaim from it, we feel like a fraud inside and we feel really uncomfortable about it. But if we do the steps of spending time in solitude periodically, it doesn't have to be for long periods of time, it could just be a few minutes each day, just to give us time to reflect and connect with ourselves and remain and develop that personal relationship with ourselves, because this then allows us to know whether we're on track based on how we're feeling. Because if we don't stay in touch with our feelings, which is the opposite sign of Capricorn's Cancer, then we're much more easily pulled off path and we end up being seduced into pursuing a goal which isn't right for us. If we remain connected with our roots, the core of our being, we know more clearly whether what we're doing is right for who we are, based on whether it feels like it's honouring our core nature, or if it's asking us to compromise or undermine its personal integrity. So there's a lot to take on board there, but the next 5 months is an opportunity to really dig deep within ourselves and make sure that we do truly know who we are, and the goals that we're pursuing are congruent with that. Because the goals aren't right for who we are, then what often happens during the Saturn retrograde is those goals just start to disintegrate, or they start to fall apart. Because with the ego being diminished by the energies of the retrograde, and all that energy being turned inwards rather than projected outwards, any goal that we're pursuing isn't true to who we are, it becomes a lot harder to pursue it. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't keep doing it. We may still pursue things doggedly, but we need to, if we're suddenly finding things a heck of a lot harder to achieve the goal, then it may be worth looking within ourselves and checking ourselves to make sure that what we're doing is true to who we are and is actually the right thing to do. But if we know deep down that what we're doing isn't actually right for who we are, then that inner resistance further undermines the goals which aren't right for who we are. So we need to make sure that we stay true to who we are, we maintain that personal integrity so that our actions are aligned with who we are, what we say and what we do are one and the same, and the goals that we set are aligned with our personal nature, our personal character. And we also use this retrograde to develop greater reserves of personal discipline, of patience, of persistence, and of self-control. So when things aren't going particularly smoothly for whatever reason, we don't just fly off the handle. If we don't just project the issues onto them and resort to the blame game. We look within ourselves and take responsibility for working on the areas where there's a weakness and transforming our core nature so that we have that core resilience, we have that internal strength, and we have that backbone that allows us to take ownership of our own mistakes. We hold ourselves accountable for if things do or do not work out, and we take responsibility for our actions when we do something that isn't right, isn't honest, and causes karma. We learn to, if there is any karma that we have to deal with, we learn to just take it on the chin, learn a lesson from it, and then adjust our actions accordingly so that they're more honest, they're aligned with the higher laws of nature that we learned when Saturn was going through Sagittarius, and we make sure that we align ourselves with that higher plan, those higher laws of nature which govern everything and that we cannot avoid in any way. Everything is guided by these laws, like karma, like service, like laws of connection, and like law of truth. Everything is around us is driven by these, and if we try and break them, we create karma for ourselves. So this is a time where we need to, it's not enough to know about spiritual laws, it's not enough to have the spiritual knowledge, now we need to apply it, otherwise we just lose it. So I hope that's a useful guide for you for Saturn retrograde in Capricorn this year. This particular theme was obviously going to keep going up until when Saturn moves into Aquarius in 2020. So the more we use this period where Saturn is in his home sign of Capricorn to develop those qualities like self-discipline, personal integrity, and commitment to being truthful and authentic rather than lying or trying to use shortcuts to get to goals faster. So it's learning not to shade the truth, to be completely honest and be true to who we are as well. And by doing this, Saturn then becomes an important ally that helps us to understand where our weaknesses are and how we can strengthen them. But as I've said on the other astrology videos, the astrology in itself doesn't control us. It just highlights the key kind of lessons to be learned at this time. But those lessons are only learned if we actually commit to them, if we take the actions necessary and we have the willingness to widen our sphere of personal awareness, to take that inward journey to develop greater degrees of personal integrity through working on our core weaknesses and working on our willingness to take responsibility for our actions. Because if we do the work of Saturn, we can then achieve true freedom, where everything that we're doing is aligned with truth, and by taking responsibility for our lives, we can achieve that greater freedom to being responsible for our actions, our thoughts, our words. We don't blame other people, we don't allow other people to have any kind of control over us through refusing to take responsibility for our own actions. And through this, Saturn brings us that true freedom. But we have to do the work ourselves. It's not something the astrology forces on us. We have to make the choice to engage in spiritual discipline and to be prepared to be honest with ourselves and honest with other people, so that we're not creating karma for ourselves. So I hope that's a useful guide for Saturn in Capricorn. This video will also be available on our website, so I'll post the links down below for anyone to see what else we do at the Magdalene Centre. Because the astrology is more like a guideline or a map of what's going on in the energies around us, but some of the other things like the mantra meditation that we do at the centre that help us to discover the greater depths of our own minds and take responsibility for how our lives unfold through retraining our minds and rewiring them so that we pursue empowerment rather than trying to remain small and trying to hide from the truth. So may Saturn's retrograde through Capricorn bring you much insight, greater degrees of patience and greater degrees of self-discipline so that you can achieve those long-term goals that you truly strive for. Take care and be blessed.